moving in Wednesday afternoon. My sister winked. Dad already approved. I opened my app security, armed. Wednesday morning, motion sensors, break-in recording, police alert. When she arrived, When Brielle walked into the kitchen that evening, I immediately noticed that she was in high spirits. Her smile was a little too wide, her eyes were shining, and her hands were nervously fiddling with the strap of her bag. My 35-year-old sister, always perfectly coiffed and wearing a business suit, even at home, sat down at the table and placed her palms on the tabletop. Dad stood up from his chair by the window to greet her. Gordon Corbett, a former safety inspector, moved slowly after his stroke, dragging his left leg slightly. He nodded to Brielle, then sat down across from her. I stood by the stove, stirring coffee. "Dad, Sammy." She straightened her shoulders. "I'll stop by on Wednesday after lunch. Dad has already given me final approval to take Mom's things from the attic." She winked at me, as if the two of us were in this together, as if it were our joint venture. Dad nodded. "Yes, the attic. Mom's boxes. You can take them." "Thank you," Brielle smiled. "I just want to have something to remember her by." I put the coffee on the table and sat down next to Dad. "Of course, Brielle. Just don't go into my office. There are client projects under NDA. You understand? Confidential material." She waved her hand. "Of course. Why would I need your office? I'm not spying on your drawings." She smiled again, easily, carefree. But something in her eyes caught my attention. Some kind of tension, a quick glance to the side. I nodded and took a sip of coffee. Dinner passed almost in silence. Brielle talked about work, about new contracts for medical equipment for hospitals. Dad listened, nodding occasionally. I ate pasta and thought. A year ago, my mother died. Pancreatic cancer, fast, cruel. I took care of her for 5 years. First for minor illnesses, then for more serious ones. When she was diagnosed, I was already there all the time. I worked from home as a graphic designer for a small advertising agency so that I could be available. Nights in the hospital, then at home when she could no longer get up. My dad was there too, but he was barely holding on himself after his stroke 2 years ago. Brielle disappeared 5 years ago, just like that, without explanation. At first, she called rarely, then she stopped altogether. She didn't come for the holidays, didn't respond to messages. I called her when Mom was hospitalized. She dropped the call. She wrote briefly, "Can't talk right now. Sorry." She didn't come to the funeral. I stood by the grave with my dad holding his hand. He was crying and shaking. My mom's sister came from Iowa, stayed for a day, and left. A few neighbors and my mom's friends were there. Brielle wasn't. A month ago, she called. She said she wanted to see me, that she was sorry, that time changes everything. I let her in because my dad asked me to. He was so happy. He hugged her and cried with joy. She cried too, saying she was sorry she didn't know how to come back. I watched from the sidelines. Something didn't add up, but I couldn't figure out what it was. After my mother's death, I sorted through her papers and found her will. My mother left me almost everything. Her savings, about $20,000, jewelry, my grandmother's wedding ring, a necklace, several gold bracelets, family photo albums. Brielle was not mentioned in the will at all. The notary explained that my mother had come to him 3 months before her death and changed everything. I didn't understand why. My mother was never cruel, but she didn't explain either. After dinner, Brielle left. She kissed my father on the cheek and waved to me. I stood on the porch and watched her silver sedan disappear around the bend. Something tightened in my chest. I went back inside and closed the door. Dad was sitting in an armchair in the living room, staring into space. "Dad, are you sure you want her to take Mom's things?" He looked at me. "She's her daughter, too. She has a right to something. Mom's old boxes are in the attic, clothes, books, trinkets. Let her take them if she wants." I nodded. I went upstairs to my office on the 2nd floor, a small room, a desk by the window, a computer, shelves with folders of client projects. That's where I worked, drawing logos, layouts, banners. Nothing special, but it was mine. I opened the bottom drawer of the desk. My mother's documents were there. A copy of her will, birth certificates, bank statements, a folder with medical records. I moved them here after my mother's death because my father sometimes forgot where things were. Everything was in place, but the feeling of anxiety did not go away. I picked up my phone and opened the security system app. 2 months ago, I installed cameras and an alarm system after the Mill Warren's neighbors had their house burglarized in broad daylight. It was an inexpensive system, bought online, but it worked well. Motion sensors on the doors and windows, video recording to the cloud, automatic call to the police in case of intrusion. I set up the cameras for the front door, the first floor windows, and the garage, but not for the interior rooms. Now I went into the settings. I activated the hidden camera I had installed on a shelf behind a photo frame in my office. Small, almost invisible. I programmed the motion sensor specifically for this room. If anyone enters on Wednesday, the system will detect it, record it, and send a signal to my phone. Maybe I'm being paranoid. Maybe it's unnecessary. But Brielle's gaze, her wink, her overly sweet tone, everything screamed, something is wrong. Wednesday dawned sunny. I went to work in the morning, leaving Dad at home. He felt fine and said he would read the newspaper and watch the news. I told him not to open the door to anyone except Brielle. "I'm not a child, Sammy," he grumbled. "I know, Dad." At the agency office, I tried to focus on a mock-up for a new client, an Asian restaurant that needed a logo and menu, but my eyes kept slipping to the phone lying face up on the table. The app showed that everything was calm. The camera at the front door had only recorded the mailman at 9 in the morning. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the screen flashed with a notification. The front door opened. I opened the recording. Brielle in jeans and a light sweater, 2 folding boxes in her hands. She smiled at the camera and waved. She came in. I watched the camera in the hallway. She walked past, went up the stairs. There were no cameras there, except for one, in my office. And after dinner, Brielle left. She kissed her dad on the cheek and waved to me. I stood on the porch and watched her silver sedan disappear around the bend. Something tightened in my chest. I went back inside and closed the door. Dad was sitting in an armchair in the living room, staring into space. "Dad, are you sure you want her to take Mom's things?" He looked at me. "She's her daughter, too. She has a right to something." "But what exactly did you allow her to take?" "The attic. Mom's old boxes are there. Clothes, books, odds and ends. Let her take them if she wants." I nodded. I went upstairs to my office on the second floor. It was a small room with a desk by the window, a computer, and shelves with folders of client projects. That's where I worked, designing logos, layouts, and banners. Nothing special, but it was mine. I opened the bottom drawer of the desk. My mother's documents were there. A copy of her will, birth certificates, bank statements, a folder with medical records. I moved them here after my mother's death because my father sometimes forgot where things were. Everything was in place, but the feeling of anxiety did not go away. I picked up my phone and opened the security system app. 2 months ago, I installed cameras and an alarm system after the Mill Warren's house was burglarized in broad daylight. It's an inexpensive system I bought online, but it works well. Motion sensors on doors and windows, video recording to the cloud, automatic police call in case of intrusion. I set up the cameras for the front door, first floor windows, and garage, but not for the interior rooms. Now I went into the settings. I activated the hidden camera that I installed on the shelf behind the photo frame in my office. Small, almost invisible. I programmed the motion sensor specifically for this room. If someone enters on Wednesday, the system will detect it, record it, and send a signal to my phone. Maybe I'm being paranoid. Maybe I'm wrong. But Brielle's look, her wink, her overly sweet tone, everything screamed something's wrong. Wednesday dawned sunny. I went to work in the morning, leaving Dad at home. He felt fine and said he would read the newspaper and watch the news. I told him not to open the door to anyone except Brielle. "I'm not a child, Sammy," he grumbled. "I know, Dad." At the agency office, I tried to focus on a layout for a new client. an Asian restaurant that needed a logo and menu. Ow, but my eyes kept slipping to the phone lying face up on the table. The app showed that everything was calm. The camera at the front door had only recorded the mailman at 9 in the morning. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the screen flashed with a notification. The front door had opened. I opened the recording. Brielle in jeans and a light sweater, 2 folding boxes in her hands. She smiled at the camera and waved. She came in. I watched the camera in the hallway. She walked past, went up the stairs. There were no cameras there except for one, in my office. 15 minutes passed without incident. I imagined her walking around the attic, rummaging through my mother's boxes of old clothes and books. Then my phone vibrated. Notification motion sensor in the office. My heart skipped a beat. I opened the app and clicked on the live feed. Brielle was standing in the doorway of my office. She looked over her shoulder, then entered, quietly, carefully. She approached my desk, pulled out a chair, and sat down. She opened the top drawer, pens, markers, stickers. She closed it. Then the bottom one. I held my breath. She took out a folder, opened it, flipped through a few pages. My mother's will. I recognized the blue cover. Then she took out her phone and started photographing the pages, quickly, nervously, her hands trembling slightly. I pressed the red button on the screen. The alarm went off instantly. Even here, through the phone, I heard the deafening roar of the siren. In the recording, Brielle flinched and dropped the phone. It fell to the floor. She grabbed it, threw the folders back into the drawer, and ran out of the office. The camera in the hallway showed her running down the stairs, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. An automatic call went to number 911. I grabbed my bag and jacket and ran out of the office. My colleague Trent shouted something after me, but I didn't hear him. I got into the car, my hands shaking so much that I could barely insert the key into the ignition. I called my dad, but he didn't answer. I sped through the streets, running yellow lights, my heart pounding in my chest. When I pulled up to the house, there was a police car parked by the porch. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both young, were talking to Brielle on the porch. She was gesturing, explaining something, her face red, strands of hair escaping from her hairstyle. I got out of the car and walked quickly toward them. My heart was pounding so hard that it throbbed in my temples. Brielle turned to me, and I saw something unusual in her eyes, not just anger or fear, but a kind of desperate determination. "Sammy." She took a step forward, her voice trembling. "What have you done?" The female officer turned around. Her badge read, G. Palmer. "Are you the owner of the house?" "Yes." "Samantha Corbett." "Your alarm went off. This woman says she's your sister and has permission to be here." I took out my phone, opened the recording, and showed it to Officer Palmer. Brielle looked at the screen, and suddenly, her face paled even more. "I asked her not to come into my office," I said quietly. "Client projects are under confidentiality agreements. She violated my request." The officer looked at the screen. Her eyebrow rose. Brielle opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then my dad came out of the house, holding onto the handrail, his face gray. "What's going on here?" Brielle turned sharply to him. "She set a trap for me, an alarm in my office." I showed my dad the phone. He looked at the screen, his face frozen. The officer, a man named J. Lancaster, according to his badge, cleared his throat. "Would you like to file a report?" Dad shook his head. "No report, thank you." The police went to their car. The 3 of us remained on the porch. The silence was heavy, weighing on our shoulders. Brielle looked at me, and there was something frightening in her eyes. Without saying a word, she turned and walked to the car. She got in, started the engine, and drove away with a sharp screech of tires. I stood there watching her go. My heart slowly calmed down, but a heavy feeling of something unfinished remained in my chest. Dad was breathing heavily nearby, holding onto the porch railing. "Sammy," he said quietly, "she wasn't just photographing the documents for no reason." I turned to him. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at the road where Brialina's car had disappeared. Then he sighed. "Come inside. We need to check something." We went inside. Dad went to his bedroom, and I followed him. He opened the closet and took an old shoebox from the top shelf. He put it on the bed and opened it. There were papers inside, old and yellowed. He sorted through them and found one sheet. He handed it to me. It was a copy of the will, dated 3 years ago. I quickly read the text. There it was, in black and white. Mom's estate is to be divided equally between Samantha Corbett and Brielle Gatewood. I looked at Dad. Did she know about this? He nodded. Mom showed her a copy when she made the will. She wanted the girls to know she loved them both equally. That's why she reached out to you. And then Mom changed it, I whispered. 3 months before she died, Brielle didn't answer her phone. Mom cried every night. And then she decided to do it. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the paper in my hands. Now it all made sense. Brielle knew that at first she was supposed to get something too, and then suddenly nothing, and she thinks I influenced Mom, I said aloud. Dad sat down next to me. Yes, and now she's gonna fight. I looked at him. What do you mean? She didn't photograph the documents for no reason, Sammy. She's preparing for something, and we need to be ready too. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I took it out. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. Inside was a photo. An official envelope with the logo of the law firm Gatewood and Partners. Under the photo was a single line of text, "See you in court." I showed it to my dad. He read it and his face turned even grayer. "She's serious," he whispered. I sat there staring at the phone screen. My heart was pounding again. Brielle was really preparing for war, and I didn't even understand why. What happened 5 years ago? Why did she leave? What did Mom do to her that made her hate us so much? Questions swirled in my head, but there were no answers. Only this message on the screen and a heavy premonition. This is just the beginning. The week after the incident with the police, I hardly slept. Every night I replayed the words about the will in my head, about how everything was equal at first. After that evening, Dad became withdrawn, avoiding any conversation about Brielle. When I asked him about it, he just shook his head and said, "Not now, Sammy." I tried to work, but the layouts came out crooked. The colors were wrong. My boss at the agency, Liza, asked me several times if everything was okay. I nodded, smiled, and said I was just tired. On Thursday afternoon, as I sat at my computer reworking the same logo for the 5th time, the doorbell rang. The mailman handed me a large brown envelope. The return address read, Gatewood and Partners Law Firm. I froze, holding the envelope in my hands. My heart was pounding. I went into the house and closed the door. My dad was sitting in the living room watching TV. He saw me with the envelope in my hands, and his face turned pale. "Is this from her?" I nodded. I sat down on the sofa and opened the envelope. Inside were several sheets of paper, official with seals. I read the headline, "Petition to invalidate will on grounds of undue influence." My hands trembled as I read on. Brielle Gatewood and Dexter Gatewood, her husband, had officially filed a lawsuit against me in Somerset County Court. They claimed that my mother, Eleanor Corbett, was in a vulnerable state due to illness when she made the last version of her will, was taking strong painkillers, and that I, Samantha Corbett, had used my position as her sole caregiver to influence her decision and get the entire inheritance for myself. I felt sick. I read the main points aloud to my father. He listened, clutching the armrests of his chair. "They're serious," he whispered. "What should I do?" "Hire a lawyer, a good one." I started looking that same day. I called several lawyers and described the situation. Half of them refused immediately. Family inheritance cases are complicated, long and exhausting. One man advised me to just split the money with Brielle and close the case. "But that's not fair," I said. "Mom deliberately left everything to me." It will be difficult to prove that, Miss Corbett, especially if there is a previous version of the will where your sister was also mentioned. I hung up the phone. Then I found another number. Claire Wayland, a lawyer specializing in family and inheritance cases. Reviews of her were mixed. Some wrote that she was tough and uncompromising. Others that she was too expensive and cold. But everyone agreed on one thing. She wins. I called and made an appointment for the next day. Claire Wayland's office was located in a small brick building in the city center. I arrived at 10 in the morning, so nervous that my palms were sweaty. The secretary, a young woman with a short haircut, showed me into the office. Claire Wayland was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, glasses on a chain, and a dark blue suit. She didn't smile when I came in, just pointed to the chair across from her desk. "Sit down. Tell me everything." I told her everything. About my mother, about 5 years of caregiving, Brielle's disappearance, the will, the alarm incident, the lawsuit. Claire listened without interrupting, taking notes in her notebook. When I finished, she put down her pen and looked at me over her glasses. "I'll be blunt, Miss Corbett. This is a difficult case. Your sister has a case. Your mother was seriously ill and changed her will 3 months before her death, just when her condition deteriorated. You were the only person around. You took care of her. You had access to all her affairs. This is a classic case where undue influence can be claimed." "But I didn't influence her," I blurted out. "She decided for herself." "I believe you, but the court needs evidence. Are there any witnesses who can confirm your mother's mental capacity when she made her last will?" The notary was there. He certified the signature. "Good, that will help. But the notary will only confirm that your mother signed the document, not that she was free from your influence. We need more. Do you know why your sister broke off contact 5 years ago?" I hesitated. "No, she never explained. She just left." Claire tapped her pen on the table. "That's the key. If we can prove that your mother changed her will because of a conscious decision related to your sister's behavior, and not because of your influence, we'll win. We need to find out what happened 5 years ago." "My father knows, but he doesn't want to talk. Convince him?" "Without this information, our chances are significantly lower." She named her fee. I froze. It was almost all that was left in my account after paying for my father's medication and the bills for the house, but I had no choice. "All right," I said, "I'll hire you." Claire nodded. "Then let's get started. The first hearing is in 3 weeks. By then, gather all the documents, your mother's medical records, correspondence with your sister, if any evidence that your mother acted deliberately, and talk to your father. It's important." I drove home with a heavy feeling in my chest. I entered the house and found my father in the kitchen. He was making coffee, slowly, carefully. "Dad, we need to talk." He didn't turn around. "About what?" "About Brielle, about why she left 5 years ago." Silence. Only the gurgling of the coffee maker. "Dad, please. The lawyer says it's important. If we don't find out why Mom changed her will, I'll lose the case." He turned off the coffee maker and turned to me. His face was gray, his eyes tired. "All right, sit down, Sammy." We sat down at the kitchen table. Dad poured himself some coffee, took a sip, then spoke. His voice was quiet, somewhat broken. "Many years ago, your mother betrayed me with her colleague, Rainer Hayes. They worked together at the hospital, she as a nurse, he as an orderly. It went on for several months. Then she got pregnant. I was numb. My heart was beating so loudly that I thought Dad would hear it. "Brielle?" He nodded. "I found out when she was born. Your mother confessed. She cried and begged for forgiveness. I could have left. I could have filed for divorce. But I loved her. And I decided to stay. I decided to raise Brielle as my daughter." "Does she know?" "She found out." Rainer showed up suddenly, drunk, demanding money. He was yelling under our windows. Brielle heard him. She asked her mother. Mom couldn't lie. I remembered how Brielle changed that year. She became cold, withdrawn, constantly arguing with her mother. I didn't understand why at the time. She distanced herself after that, Dad continued. She became angry with her mother, with me, with everyone. And 5 years ago, after another argument, she issued an ultimatum. She said that her mother had to publicly admit her betrayal in front of the whole family, or Brielle would leave forever. And your mother refused? Yes. She was ashamed. She was afraid that everyone would find out and that I would lose respect for her. Even though I had forgiven her long ago. But she couldn't, and Brielle left. She cut off all contact. She didn't answer calls or visit. I sat there looking at my dad, trying to process what I had heard. All these years, I didn't know. Mom never hinted at it, and Dad was silent too. Why didn't you tell me? Because it's not your burden, Sammy. It's your mom and my story. But now it was necessary. Did Mom change her will because of this? Partly. She called Brielle over the last few months, asking her to come, at least to say goodbye. Brielle didn't answer, and then Mom decided that if her daughter didn't want to be part of the family, she didn't deserve her inheritance. She was of sound mind, Sammy. I was there when she signed it. The notary will confirm it, too. I jumped up from my chair. I have to find this Rayner guy. He must know something about Brielle. Maybe it will help. What for? To understand why she wants this inheritance so desperately. It's not just money, Dad. There's something more to it. Dad took an old notebook out of his pocket and flipped through the pages. He wrote the address on a piece of paper. The last time I heard, he was living in a trailer park near Harrisburg, but that was 5 years ago. I don't know if he's still there. I took the piece of paper, thanked him, and kissed Dad on the cheek. I went to my office and searched the internet for information about Rayner Hess. I found several profiles on social media, but none of them matched his age or location. And then I tried searching for phone numbers. One result in Harrisburg, a mechanic at an auto repair shop. I called. After a few rings, a hoarse male voice answered, "Hello?" "Rayner Hess? Who's calling?" "My name is Samantha Corbett. I'm Eleanor Corbett's daughter." Silence. Then, "What do you want?" "To talk." "About Brielle." He sighed heavily. "Come tomorrow. The auto repair shop on Gardner Street, 14, at 2 o'clock. And he hung up. I sat there holding the phone, my heart pounding. I didn't know what to expect from this meeting, but I felt it was important. The next day, I drove to Harrisburg. The trip took an hour. The auto shop was old and shabby, with a sign hanging by a single bolt. I parked and went inside. Rayner Hess was standing next to a dismantled engine, wiping his hands with a rag. He was about 60 years old, with a wrinkled face, gray hair, and hands covered in grease. He looked at me and nodded. "Are you Samantha?" "Yes." "Let's go outside. It's noisy in here." We went out into a small courtyard behind the shop. He lit a cigarette and took a drag. "Your mother died, didn't she?" "A year ago." "That's too bad. She was a good woman. I was a fool." I didn't know what to say. I stood there, waiting. "You want to know about Brielle?" He continued. "What exactly?" "When was the last time you spoke to her?" "About 10 years ago. She showed up here, yelled at me, demanded money. She said I ruined her life, that I owed her at least something. I said I had nothing. She called me a scumbag and left." "She hasn't been back?" "No, but last year I saw her at a bar nearby. She was with some man, not her husband. I saw her wedding photo on Facebook once. Another man. They were sitting very close together, kissing. I froze." "Are you sure?" "Yes. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, it seems. Her mother betrayed her, and she did too." I thanked him and drove back. Thoughts were spinning in my head. Was it true? Was Brielle cheating on her husband Dexter? And if so, did he know? At home, I called Claire and told her what I had found out. She listened attentively. "The information about your father is interesting. It explains your mother's motive for changing the will. But the information about your sister's possible betrayal, it's risky to use it." "Why?" "Because it could look like an attempt to ruin her reputation in order to win the case. But If her husband doesn't know and finds out, it could change everything. He might withdraw his support. Without him, your sister's case weakens, considering that her husband is her lawyer. How can I find out? Do you have any mutual acquaintances with your sister? I thought about it. Laurel. We met in college. She was friends with both me and Brielle. Yes, one friend. Contact her, carefully. Find out what she knows. I called Laurel that evening. She answered after the third ring, her voice surprised. Sammy, hi, long time no hear. Hi, Laure, can we meet? I need to talk. Sure. How about tomorrow evening? The next day, we met at a small coffee shop downtown. Laurel looked good, with a short dark haircut and bright lipstick. She hugged me and we sat down at a table by the window. How are you? She asked. I heard you and Brielle are having some problems. Who told you that? She did. She called last week, crying, saying you took her inheritance away from her. I squeezed my cup. It's more complicated than she says. Laure, I want to ask you something. And I need an honest answer. She looked wary. What is it? Have you seen Brielle with someone? Not Dexter, another man. Laurel froze. She looked away. Why do you need to know? Please, Laure, it's important. She sighed. Yes, I have. Several times last year. They were at a bar, then once at a restaurant. They seemed close. I didn't want to get involved, Sammy. It's none of my business. Who is he? I don't know. I've never seen him before. Tall, dark hair, around 40. I thanked her. We talked a little more, but I wasn't listening anymore. My mind was racing. Dexter doesn't know. I'm sure of it. If he knew, he wouldn't be supporting Brielle in this lawsuit. At home, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring out the window. Dad was already asleep. The house was quiet. I held the phone in my hands, thinking, I have to tell Dexter. But how? Go to him and just lay it out? He won't believe me. He'll think I'm making it up to disrupt the trial, but if I don't tell him, I'll lose. Brielle and Dexter are stronger together. Their law firm, their resources. I'm alone, with a lawyer who's costing me my last penny. I looked at my phone screen. I found the address of Dexter Gatewood's office online. Tomorrow I'll go to him. I'll tell him the truth and let him decide for himself what to believe. My heart was pounding as I went to bed that night. It felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, and the next step would either save me or throw me down. But there was no choice. I had to take the risk. Dexter Gatewood's office was located in a 3-story glass and concrete building on the outskirts of the business center. I parked across the street and sat in my car for 10 minutes, gathering my courage. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. What would I say? How would I start the conversation? Hi, I'm Samantha, your wife's sister. And by the way, she's cheating on you. Finally, I got out of the car. I entered the building and went up to the second floor. The sign on the door read, Gatewood and Partners Family Law. I opened the door and entered the reception area. A secretary, a young blonde woman with glasses, was sitting at the desk. Good afternoon. How can I help you? I'd like to see Mr. Gatewood. It's personal. Do you have an appointment? No, but Mr. Gatewood doesn't see anyone without an appointment. I can schedule you for next week. I sighed. Of course. What did I expect? Tell him Samantha Corbett is here. His wife's sister. It's important. The secretary raised an eyebrow, picked up the phone, and dialed an internal number. She spoke quietly, and I couldn't hear her words. Then she hung up. He'll see you in 5 minutes. Third door on the left. I walked down the hallway, my heart pounding. I knocked on the door. Come in. I opened it. Dexter Gatewood was sitting at a large wooden desk looking through papers. He was about 37 with dark hair, sharp features, and a perfectly pressed suit. He looked up, and I saw coldness in his eyes. Miss Corbett, what are you doing here? I sat down in the chair opposite him, even though he hadn't invited me to. I need to talk to you about Brielle. He put down his papers and crossed his arms over his chest. If this is about the lawsuit, you should be talking to your lawyer, not me. It's not about the lawsuit. Well, not entirely. Then what is it about? I took a deep breath. Do you know that Brielle is cheating on you? Silence. Dexter didn't move, but something changed in his expression. His jaw tightened. Excuse me? Last year, she was seen with another man. Several times? At a bar, at a restaurant. They were very close. He laughed, sharply, without humor. Of course. You came here to accuse my wife of cheating the day before the trial. Is that your strategy? Dirty tricks? It's not dirty tricks, it's the truth. Do you have proof? A witness. Our mutual friend Laurel saw them. Laurel? He snorted. Your friend? Convenient. Miss Corbett, I'm not stupid. You're trying to derail the case by sowing discord between me and Brielle. It won't work. I'm not making this up. Ask Rainer Hess, Brielle's biological father. He saw them too. Dexter froze. He repeated, biological father? I realized I had said too much. He didn't know about Rainer. Brielle hadn't told him. Yes, I said quietly. Gordon Corbett is not her biological father. It's a long story, but the point is that her biological father also saw Brielle with an unfamiliar man last year. Dexter stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the street. He was silent for a minute or two. Then he turned around. Even if that's true, why did you come to me? What do you want? I want you to know the truth before you support her in court against me. You want me to withdraw the lawsuit. I want you to know who you're dealing with. He looked at me for a long time, assessing me. Then he turned back to the table and sat down. Leave, Miss Corbett. I need to think. Will you check? Get out. Now. I got up and left the office. My heart was pounding so hard that my ears were ringing. I got in the car and drove home. I didn't know if he believed me or if he would check, but I did what I could. The next day was the trial. I arrived at the courthouse at 9 a.m. with Claire. She was wearing a strict black suit, her hair was pulled back, and her face was serious. Stay calm, she said. Don't react emotionally to what the opposing attorney says. Let me do my job. We entered the courtroom. Brielle was already sitting at the table on the other side. Next to her was Dexter in a dark suit. She looked at me, and I saw hatred in her eyes. Pure, cold hatred. The judge entered, and we all stood up. Judge Harland, a man in his 60s, gray-haired with a stern face. He sat down and tapped his gavel. The case of Gatewood versus Corbett. Appeal of a will on the grounds of undue influence. Mr. Gatewood, are you ready to present your case? Dexter stood up and approached the podium. His voice was firm and confident. Your Honor, we contend that the will of the deceased, Eleanor Corbett, drawn up 3 months before her death, is invalid due to undue influence on the part of the defendant, Samantha Corbett. We have evidence that the deceased was in a vulnerable state due to illness, was taking strong painkillers that affected her consciousness, and that the defendant, as the only person caring for her, used her position to influence the deceased's decisions. He called the first witness the mother's doctor, Dr. Stephen Richmond, an elderly man with glasses. He testified that the mother had been taking morphine for the last few months, that this could affect her clarity of thought, and that patients on such a level of pain medication often do not fully realize their actions. Claire stood up for cross-examination. Dr. Richmond, was Mrs. Corbett deemed incompetent at the time the will was drafted? No. Was she diagnosed with dementia or other cognitive impairments? No. Was she able to hold a conversation, make decisions about her treatment? Yes. She was? Thank you. I have no further questions. Dexter called the next witness, the pharmacist who dispensed the medication to the mother. He confirmed that the dose of morphine was significant. Dexter then showed the medical records and the dates of her doctor's visits. Everything coincided with the period when the last will was drawn up. Your Honor, Dexter said, we see a clear pattern. The deceased changed her will at the very time when her condition deteriorated, when she was most vulnerable, and the defendant, Samantha Corbett, was the only person around, had access to all her affairs. isolated her mother from other family members, including my client, Brielle Gatewood. Judge Harlan nodded and made a note. Claire stood up. Your Honor, I would like to call a witness for the defense. Notary Marcus Teller. A man in his 50s, wearing a suit with a conscientious look, he sat down in the witness chair. Claire approached. Mr. Teller, you certified Mrs. Eleanor Corbett's signature on her will 3 years ago and on her last will, drawn up 3 months before her death. Is that correct? Yes. Please describe your observations during the certification of the last will. Mrs. Corbett came to my office accompanied by her husband, Mr. Gordon Corbett. She appeared physically frail, but her mind was clear. I asked her standard questions to ensure she understood the contents of the document, and she answered clearly and without hesitation. She understood what she was doing. Emma, did anyone pressure her? Was Samantha Corbett present during the signing? No, only Mrs. Corbett. Her husband and I were present. Thank you. Dexter stood up for cross-examination. Mr. Teller, are you a doctor, a psychiatrist? No, so you cannot professionally assess whether Mrs. Corbett was under the influence of medication at the time. I can assess whether she understood what she was signing, and she did. But you cannot know whether it was her true choice or the result of weeks of influence from her daughter, who controlled every aspect of her life. Claire jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. That's hearsay. Overruled! The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Gatewood, stick to the facts. Dexter nodded and returned to the table. Claire called the next witness, Gordon's father. Dad stood up and slowly walked to the witness chair. He looked tired and aged. He sat down and put his hands on the armrests. Claire approached him. Mr. Corbett, were you present when your wife made her last will and testament? Yes. Please describe the circumstances. Dad spoke quietly but clearly. My wife wanted to change her will because our eldest daughter, Brielle, broke off contact with us 5 years ago. Eleanor had been calling her for the last few months, asking her to come and say goodbye. Brielle didn't respond. It hurt Eleanor very much. She told me, if Brielle doesn't want to be part of the family, then she doesn't deserve to inherit. That was her decision, not Samantha's. Why did Brielle break off contact? Dad hesitated. He glanced at Brielle. She sat with her fists clenched, her face pale, because of a family conflict, of a personal nature. Can you elaborate? Brielle found out that I'm not her biological father. My wife had a relationship with another man before we got married. I decided to raise Brielle as my daughter, but after she found out, she pushed us away. 5 years ago, she gave an ultimatum. Either Eleanor publicly admits to the affair, or Brielle leaves. Eleanor couldn't do it. Brielle left. Silence fell over the courtroom. Judge Harlan looked up from his notes. Brielle sat trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. Dexter stood up. Objection, Your Honor. This information is irrelevant to the case. On the contrary, said Claire, it explains the deceased's motivation for changing her will. It was not Samantha Corbett's influence. It was a conscious decision by the mother after her eldest daughter broke off contact. The judge nodded. Objection overruled. Continue. Claire turned to her father. Thank you, Mr. Corbett. No further questions. Dad returned to his seat. I saw him avoid Brielle's gaze. Dexter called Brielle to the stand. She approached the chair and sat down. She wiped her face with a napkin. Dexter approached her, his voice softer now. Brielle, tell the court why you believe the will is unfair. She spoke, her voice trembling. I learned the truth about my birth when I was 16. It destroyed me. My whole life was a lie. My mother lied, my father lied, everyone lied. I couldn't stay in that family. I left and built my own life. But my mother owed me at least that. An inheritance. Compensation for the years of lies. At first, the will was split evenly between me and Samantha. But then Samantha was there, whispering in my mother's ear, isolating her, and my mother changed the will. It's unfair, Claire stood up. Miss Gatewood, did your mother call you during the last months of her life? Yes. Did you answer? Pause. No. Why? Because I couldn't. It was too painful. But you could have come to the funeral? I didn't know what to say. So you didn't come to say goodbye to your mother. You didn't answer her calls, but you think she owes you an inheritance? Brielle began to cry. She owes me the truth. She ruined my life with her lies, Judge Harland intervened. Miss Gatewood, I understand your pain, but the law does not take emotional debts into account. The question is whether the will was made under undue influence or not. Your feelings, however justified, are not a legal argument. Brielle wiped her face and returned to her seat. Dexter was looking at her, and I saw something in his eyes. Not sympathy, but some kind of cold assessment. The judge announced a 1-hour recess. We went out into the hallway. Claire said that everything was going well, but the judge was leaning toward Brielle because of the medical evidence. I was standing by the window, looking out at the street. When I heard footsteps behind me, I turned around. Dexter was standing a few feet away, looking at me. He came closer and stopped. I got a text message, he said quietly. You were right. She's been cheating on me for a year, maybe longer. I froze. How did you find out? I hired a private investigator after your visit. He found evidence, photos, call records, hotel receipts in her name. He looked devastated. His eyes were red, his face gray. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. You did me a favor. I'm withdrawing as co-plaintiff. I'm filing for divorce today after court. Brielle is on her own. But the judge is already leaning in her favor. Without me, the case weakens. I was the lead attorney. I financed everything. And now she'll have to hire someone else, and there's no time. The judge will take that into account. Congratulations, ma'am. He looked at me again, then turned and walked away. I stood there, my heart pounding. This is a chance. It's a real chance to win. After the break, the court reconvened. Judge Harland sat down and looked at the tables on both sides. He noticed that Dexter was sitting separately, not at Brielle's table. Mr. Gatewood, are you no longer representing the plaintiff? Dexter stood up. Your Honor, I am withdrawing from the case as co-plaintiff and attorney. Personal reasons. I request that my withdrawal be approved. The judge raised an eyebrow. Approved? Miss Gatewood, do you need a new attorney? Brielle stood up, her face pale, her hands trembling. I don't know. Can I have a postponement? For how long? A week? 2. The judge snorted. The case is already in progress, Miss Gatewood. If you are not prepared to continue without counsel, I can appoint a public defender for you, or you can withdraw your claim. No, I will not withdraw. Then we'll continue. Present your closing arguments. Brielle tried to speak, but her words were jumbled. She wasn't a lawyer and didn't know how to construct arguments. Claire took advantage of this, methodically dismantling each point. The judge listened and took notes. Finally, he banged his gavel. The court will take the case under advisement. The decision will be announced in a week. The week passed in a fog. I hardly slept or ate. Claire called twice, saying the chances were good, but there were no guarantees. Finally, the day of the decision arrived. We were back in the courtroom. Brielle sat alone at the table, without Dexter, without a lawyer. She looked small and broken. Judge Harland entered, and we stood up. He sat down and opened his folder. The court has considered all the evidence and testimony. The issue of undue influence is always a difficult one. But in this case, the court finds that the evidence in favor of the plaintiff is insufficient. The notary confirmed the deceased's sanity at the time the will was made. Witness Gordon Corbett explained the deceased's motivation for changing the will, which was not related to the influence of the defendant. Medical evidence shows that the deceased, although she was taking painkillers, was not deemed incapacitated. In the absence of clear evidence of undue influence, the court finds the will to be valid. The claim is dismissed. The gavel fell. It was over. I had won. Claire squeezed my hand and smiled. I sat there, unable to believe it. I really had won. Brielle stood up and left the courtroom without looking at me. I followed her and caught up with her on the courthouse steps. She stood there looking at the street, her shoulders shaking. "Brielle," I called. She turned around. Her face was wet with tears, her eyes red. "You took everything from me," she whispered. "My mom, my dad, my inheritance, my husband, everything." I looked at her and suddenly felt not triumph, but exhaustion. Terrible exhaustion. "You pushed everyone away yourself," I said quietly. "I didn't take anything. You left on your own." "Because you all lied to me." "Yes. Mom was wrong. But you could have forgiven her. You could have stayed. You could have come to say goodbye. But you chose anger, and here you are now." Brielle looked at me for a long time. Then she turned and walked down the stairs without looking back. I stood there, watching her until she disappeared around the corner. Claire came up to me and put her hand on my shoulder. "You won, Samantha. You can go home now." I nodded, but the victory felt empty. My sister was gone. Maybe forever. The family was finally broken. I had received my inheritance, but I had lost Brielle. I drove home. Dad was sitting on the porch, waiting. When he saw my face, he stood up. "Did you win?" "Yes." He hugged me. I stood in his arms, looked at the road, and thought, what now? What would happen next? In the evening, when Dad was already asleep, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. "This is Dexter. I thought you should know. Brielle took the children and left. She didn't say where. If she contacts you, let me know." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Brielle was gone, with the kids. This wasn't good. This wasn't good at all. I dialed Dexter's number. He answered after the first ring. "Hello? It's Samantha. What do you mean? Took the kids." She came home after court, packed her things, picked up the kids from school, and left. She left a note saying, "I need time to think." That was 4 hours ago. Her phone isn't answering. "Did you call the police?" "Not yet. Legally, it's not kidnapping. She's their mother, but I'm worried. She hasn't been herself the last few days." I put down the phone and sat in the dark kitchen, thinking. Where is Brielle? What will she do? With the children broken, angry, desperate. The phone vibrated again. It was the number of the father of Brielle's children. They went to the same school as my friend's children, and I had their teacher's contact information just in case. I opened the message. "Miss Corbett, this is Dolores Hunt, Mila and Ethan Gatewood's teacher. Their mother picked them up early today and said they were going on a trip. She looked very upset. She asked me to tell you if you call, tell Sammy I'm sorry. Is everything okay?" I was gasping for breath. "Tell Sammy I'm sorry. Is this goodbye? Is this a threat? What is she up to?" I dialed Brielle's number. No answer. Again, nothing. I got up and paced around the kitchen. Think, Sammy, where could she have gone? To Rainer? No, she wasn't talking to him. To friends? She had almost no friends after she broke up with us. Suddenly, I remembered. My mother's sister, Aunt Vivian, she lives in Iowa. Brielle loved her as a child and used to visit her in the summer. I found Vivian's number in my dad's old contacts and called. Long beeps. Finally, a sleepy female voice answered. "Hello?" "Aunt Viv, it's Samantha. Sorry for calling so late. Is Brielle with you?" Pause. "Samantha? No, she's not here. Well, what happened?" "Hafoez?" I gave her a brief summary. Vivian listened, then sighed. "Oh my God, poor girl. No, she hasn't called me, but if she does, I'll let you know." She hung up. She sat down again, holding the phone, waiting. The clock on the wall showed 1 o'clock in the morning. "Where are you, Brielle? What are you doing?" The phone vibrated. Unknown number. She answered, "Yes, hello." Silence. Then a quiet child's voice. "Auntie Sammy?" Her heart was pounding. "Milo, is that you?" "Yes. Mom said not to call, but I got scared. We've been driving for a long time, and she's crying. Where are we going?" Milo, where are you now? Can you see any signs on the road? I can hear it moving, then. The sign says, Welcome to Pennsylvania, and something about a lake. Pennsylvania. She's heading north. To what? The lake. Grandma and Grandpa had a house by Lake Wallenpaupack. We used to go there when we were kids. It was sold a long time ago, but Milo, give the phone to Mom. She says to hang up. Milo, please. The line went dead. I sat there with the phone in my hand, my heart pounding. Brielle is going to the old house by the lake. Why? What is she going to do? I ran to my dad's bedroom and woke him up. Dad, the old house by Lake Wallenpope. Does it still exist? He rubbed his eyes. What? Sammy, it's 2 a.m. Brielle is going there with the kids. I don't think she's herself. Is the house still there? Dad sat up, his face serious. It was sold about 10 years ago, but the key... Your mom kept a spare key, just in case. It's somewhere in the dresser. I rushed to my mom's bedroom, opened the dresser, and rummaged through her things. I found a small key on a chain with a tag that said, Lake. I grabbed my jacket and car keys. I'm going there. Sammy, wait! Call the police. There's no time. If she's really planning something. I ran out of the house, got in the car, and drove off. The road to Lake Wallenpope takes 3 hours. I was driving faster than the speed limit. My heart was pounding. My hands were gripping the steering wheel. Where are you, Brielle? What are you going to do? The road seemed endless. It was dark all around. Only the headlights illuminated the asphalt ahead. I drove without feeling tired, only fear and some strange premonition. My phone lay on the passenger seat, and I glanced at it every minute. What if Milo called back? What if Brielle called? Silence. At 4 a.m, I drove up to Lake Wallenpaupack. It was dark and cold, and the wind swayed the branches of the trees. The old house stood a little way off the road, small, wooden, with peeling paint. Next to it was Brielle's silver sedan. I parked and got out of the car. My heart was pounding so hard that it was hard to breathe. I walked up to the door and knocked. Nothing. I tried the handle. It was locked. I took out the key I had borrowed from my dad and inserted it into the lock. It turned with a creak. I opened the door and went inside. It was dark inside. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and shone it around. Old furniture, dust, the smell of dampness. Everything was just as I remembered from my childhood, only neglected. Brielle? I called softly. I heard a rustling sound from the other room. I walked on and opened the bedroom door. Brielle was sitting on the bed, hugging 2 children. Milo, a boy of about 8, and Caitlin, a girl of about 5. The children were asleep, wrapped in an old blanket. Brielle looked at me, her face wet with tears. How did you find us? She whispered. Milo called. Bri, what are you doing? Dexter is looking for you. Everyone is looking for you. She laughed. Quietly, brokenly. Everyone is looking for me. Of course. Poor crazy Brielle who ran away with her children. You're not crazy, but you scare me. Why did you come here? She looked at the children and stroked Milo's head. I wanted to be where it was good. When we were little, remember? We came here in the summer, swam in the lake, Mom baked pies, Dad taught us how to fish. Everything was simple then, before I found out the truth. I walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. Bree! Don't say everything will be okay, she interrupted. It won't. I lost everything. My mother, my inheritance, my husband. Even you. I lost everything, Sammy. Her voice broke into tears. She leaned over, hiding her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook. The children stirred but did not wake up. I sat there, looking at her, and suddenly all the rage, all the resentment, all the anger melted away. All that remained was exhaustion and a strange sadness. You haven't lost me, I said quietly. I'm here. You're here to take me back, to hand me over to the police. I'm here because you're my sister, and I was afraid for you. Brielle raised her head and looked at me. Her eyes were red and swollen. After everything I've done, after the trial, after I accused you? Yes, after everything. She cried again, but now it was different. Not out of anger, but from something deeper. I moved closer and hugged her. She leaned against my shoulder, and we sat like that, two sisters in an old house by the lake, until the sky outside the window began to lighten. When Brielle calmed down, I said, "We need to call Dexter. He's worried." She nodded and wiped her face. "He hates me now." "Maybe. But he's the father of these children, and he has a right to know they're safe." I dialed Dexter's number. He answered on the first ring, his voice hoarse from sleeplessness. "Hello." "It's Samantha. I'm with Brielle. She and the children are safe." I heard him exhale, long and relieved. "Where are you?" "Our old family cottage in Pennsylvania, near Lake Wallenpaupack." "I'm coming there. Give me the address." I gave it to him and hung up. Brielle looked at me. "He'll come and he'll take them away." "Yes, but you'll see them again. He's not a monster, Brielle. He's just hurt." She nodded and looked at the children again. "I ruined everything, Sammy. With my anger, my stupidity. Mom wanted to make peace, but I wouldn't let her. Dexter loved me and I betrayed him. Dad raised me as his own and I pushed him away. And you too. You made mistakes, but it's not the end. It can be fixed." "How?" I didn't know what to say. I sat there holding her hand, waiting for dawn. Dexter arrived at 8 in the morning. He entered the house and saw the children. They were already awake, sitting on the sofa, eating cookies I had found in the car. Milo rushed to him. "Daddy!" Dexter hugged him, then Caitlin. He looked at Brielle. She stood apart, her arms crossed over her chest, her eyes downcast. "Brielle," he said quietly, "what were you thinking?" "I don't know. I just wanted to get away. With our children." "I'm sorry." He looked at her for a long time, then sighed. "We need to talk." "Seriously. Kids, pack your things and wait in the car for a minute." Milo and Caitlin obediently left. Dexter sat down on a chair and motioned for Brielle to sit across from him. I wanted to leave to give them some privacy, but he stopped me. "Stay, Samantha, you're part of this too." I sat down on the side. Dexter looked at Brielle. "I'm angry with you. For the betrayal, for the lies. But I understand where it comes from. You ran away from the pain, from the truth about yourself. I don't excuse it, but I understand." Brielle looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "I want to make it right. I don't know how, but I want to. Me too, not for us, for the children. They are not to blame for our mistakes. I don't want them to grow up in hostility. So I suggest couples therapy, not to get back together, but to learn how to be normal parents." "Agreed." She nodded. "Agreed. I agree to anything." "And one more thing." Dexter looked at me. "Samantha, thank you for not giving up on her, for coming. You saved her that night, and us too." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. Dexter got up and went out to the children. Brielle watched him go, then turned to me. "What now?" "Now we're going home. To Dad. He's worried." We got in my car and drove back. When we pulled up to the house, Dad was already standing on the porch. He saw us and came to meet us. Brielle got out of the car and stopped. Dad came over and hugged her, tightly, like he used to when she was little. "I'm sorry, Dad," Brielle whispered. "I'm sorry for everything." "Me too, sweetheart." Me too. We went into the house. Dad made coffee, and we sat down at the kitchen table, just like we used to when we were a family. Brielle told him everything about the betrayal, about Dexter, about how she lost control. "I thought Mom owed me something," she said, "that the inheritance was compensation for the pain. But really, I just wanted her to admit she was wrong, to apologize. And when she couldn't, I hated her." Dad listened, nodding. "Your mother wasn't perfect. She made mistakes, but she loved you, Brielle, until the very end." I know that now, but it's too late." "It's not too late to make peace with us," I said. With Dad, with me, to build something new? Brielle looked at me and smiled through her tears. Thank you, Sammy, for not giving up on me. I put my hand on hers. You're my sister. I couldn't do otherwise. The following weeks were calmer. Brielle hired a therapist and began attending sessions. Dexter agreed to joint custody, half the time with him, half with Brielle. The divorce went smoothly. Brielle came to visit us every weekend. It was awkward at first, but gradually the conversations became easier. Once she helped me bake a pie, my mother's recipe. Dad was watching TV in the living room. Sammy, she said, thank you for coming that night. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't shown up. I put my hand on her shoulder. You're my sister. I couldn't do anything else. We finished the pie and put it in the oven. The smell of apples and cinnamon filled the kitchen. Dad came in and smiled, just like Mom used to bake. Yes, Brielle nodded quietly, just like Mom. In the evening, we sat together at the table, ate pie, and drank tea. We talked about trivial things, about work, about Brielle's children, nothing serious, just family. When Brielle was about to leave, I walked her to the car. She hugged me. Dexter wants to meet with me next week to talk. I don't know what to expect. What do you want? I want him to forgive me. We don't have to get back together, but I don't want him to hate me. Tell him that, be honest. She nodded, got in the car, and drove away. I stood there, watching the red lights recede, and thought, maybe it really is possible to start over.